He stepped into the cafe quietly, cradling his sleeping daughter against his shoulder. Her little arms dangled, her tiny breath rising and falling as if the world outside didn't exist. The place was nearly empty, just the quiet hum of conversation, clinking spoons, and the hiss of the espresso machine. But what happened next turned a simple coffee stop into something unforgettable. The woman behind the counter froze. Her smile vanished. Her eyes locked onto the child like she'd seen a ghost. Nobody else noticed, just a tired father getting a coffee. But something about the way she gripped the edge of the counter said more. Much more. Why did she react like that? Who was this child to her? And why was the father completely unaware of the storm he'd just walked into? He looked tired, not just physically, but like someone who had been through too much in too little time. His clothes were slightly wrinkled, his eyes bloodshot, but he moved with care, like carrying that little girl was the most important thing he'd ever do. There was a kind of sadness in his posture, and yet, also peace, as if she was all that mattered now. Before we dive into this emotional roller coaster, I want to ask you something. If you've ever had a moment where life surprised you, where a twist hit you right in the heart, this story is for you. And if you want more stories like this, real or inspired by real life, that leave you thinking long after the video ends, hit that subscribe button right now. Also, let me know in the comments, have you ever witnessed something that didn't make sense at first, but later revealed a deeper truth? Share your moment, I read every one of them. And if you haven't already, tap that like button so this story can reach more people who need it. So, back to that cafe. The man ordered a cappuccino. The woman behind the counter barely nodded, trying to keep it together. Her hands trembled slightly as she turned to the machine. The girl stirred for a second in her father's arms but didn't wake. And then, the woman whispered under her breath, so softly it was almost nothing, "It can't be, the story begins right here." And where it ends? Well, you won't see it coming. Make sure you watch until the very end, because the moment you think you've figured it out, everything changes. The cafe was one of those quiet little places that seemed to exist outside of time. Warm yellow lighting, shelves stacked with mismatched books, and a chalkboard menu scribbled with half-erased specials. Rain tapped gently against the windows, wrapping the whole space in a blanket of calm. It was the kind of place you'd go to escape the world, not stumble into it. The man chose a table in the back, the kind tucked in a corner where you could disappear if you needed to. He laid his daughter gently on the bench beside him, propping up her backpack like a makeshift pillow. She stirred for a second, blinked half awake, then drifted back into sleep. He brushed a strand of hair from her forehead with the kind of care only a parent understands. He looked around the room. A couple laughed over a pastry. An older man read a newspaper. No one was watching. Or so he thought. Behind the counter, the woman couldn't stop glancing over. She poured the milk too slowly, frothed the espresso too long. Her co-workers didn't notice, she was the owner, after all, but inside, her thoughts were spinning. She hadn't seen a child like that in years. Not with those eyes. That nose. That soft curl of hair at the nape of the neck. There was something hauntingly familiar. And the man? She couldn't place him. Not yet. At the table, the father pulled out a wrinkled napkin and scribbled something, just a list of errands. But every few seconds, he glanced down at his daughter like he was afraid she might vanish. Outside, the rain began to fall harder. Thunder rolled gently in the distance. Inside, the tension started to grow. The woman stepped away from the counter for a moment, pretending to check on a delivery box in the back room. She leaned against the wall, breathing in slowly, trying to quiet the pounding in her chest. 1,000 thoughts rushed through her mind. It couldn't be. It shouldn't be. And yet, something deep inside her told her this wasn't just coincidence. Meanwhile, the father leaned back in his seat. His phone buzzed with messages he ignored. His whole world, for now, was that little girl. But safety is often just an illusion. And the past? It never stays buried for long. She returned to the counter, hands slightly damp from nerves she couldn't shake. The man approached slowly, wallet in one hand, the other resting protectively on the girl's head as he passed. He offered a tired smile. "Thanks for the coffee," he said. She tried to respond with a casual tone, but her voice came out softer than expected. "Of course." Their eyes met, just for a moment. But it was enough. A flicker of something unspoken passed between them, like a memory trying to force its way to the surface. She looked away first, pretending to wipe down the counter. The girl let out a little sigh in her sleep, turning toward her father's chest. And that sound, it was so small, so normal, but to the woman, it was like being punched in the chest. She couldn't help it anymore. "She's beautiful," the woman said quietly. He looked at her for a beat, unsure how to respond. "Thank you. She's my everything." "What's her name?" she asked, voice trembling slightly. He hesitated. "Emmy. Short for Amelia." The woman's breath caught. Her grip on the rag tightened. Her knuckles turned white. That name, it wasn't common. Not with that spelling. Not with that pronunciation. She forced a smile, but her lips barely moved. "That's a lovely name," she said, almost whispering. The father noticed something then. A subtle shift. A change in her posture, her eyes. Do you know someone named Emmy?" he asked, voice cautious. She didn't answer right away. "No. It reminds me of someone." He nodded slowly, clearly unsure. "We've been moving around a lot. It's just me and her now." The woman swallowed hard. "No, Mom." He shook his head. "She passed away 2 years ago." Silence stretched between them, heavy and personal. Behind them, a blender roared to life, breaking the moment. But the damage was already done. The cracks had started forming. And while neither of them fully understood what was happening, both could feel that something deeper was stirring. Something neither of them was ready for. The girl shifted again, mumbling softly in her sleep. "And the woman?" She whispered that name under her breath again, barely audible. "Amelia." The woman tried to return to her routine, taking orders, cleaning surfaces, checking stock, but her mind was no longer in the cafe. It was chasing ghosts. Every sound seemed muffled, like she was underwater. Her co-workers noticed she was distracted, but they knew better than to ask. She rarely spoke about her past. But now, her past had seemingly walked through the door. She snuck glances at the table in the corner. The man was helping his daughter sit up, holding a small juice box and adjusting her little hoodie. The way he moved, the patience, the tenderness, didn't match the image she'd created in her mind. She had imagined someone colder. Someone different. A young barista leaned in and whispered, "Do you know them?" The woman flinched slightly, then shook her head. "No. Just looks familiar." But that wasn't true. That child, Amelia, was tugging at something deep in her chest. The shape of her face, the way she tucked her chin when sipping the juice box, it was all too familiar. Across the room, a customer, an older woman with silver hair and curious eyes, noticed the exchange. She'd been coming to the cafe for years and had never seen the owner act this way. She watched carefully, sensing something unusual. At the table, the father leaned in and whispered something to Amelia that made her giggle. That laugh, it echoed in the woman's ears like a song from another lifetime. Behind the counter, the woman's hands shook as she tried to fill a sugar jar. Grains spilled onto the floor. She didn't notice. The older customer approached her gently. "Are you all right, dear?" She startled. "I'm fine. Just tired." But it wasn't just fatigue. It was memory, guilt, and the sense that a door she thought was permanently shut had just cracked open. The father looked up, catching the woman's eyes again. This time, he didn't look away. There was something there now, a question forming in his own mind. He could feel it too. The way she kept watching them. The emotion in her face. He leaned toward his daughter. "That lady's been staring at us." Amelia peeked up. She looks nice, she said. The air felt heavy with questions. And none of them had answers, yet. She hadn't meant to remember. But sometimes, memory doesn't ask for permission. The woman stood at the espresso machine, steam rising in front of her eyes like fog. And in that fog, a younger version of herself began to emerge, so vivid it felt real. She was 22 again, sitting on the edge of a hospital bed, staring down at her daughter. Her only child. Her miracle. Her name was Lily. She was barely out of college when she got pregnant. The father vanished the moment responsibility came knocking. She raised Lily alone, working double shifts, sacrificing everything just to give her daughter a chance. And for a while, it was enough. Lily grew into a fiercely independent woman. Too independent, maybe. At 18, she packed her bags and left. No argument. No goodbye hug. Just a note, I need to live my own life. Years passed. A few postcards. A rare birthday call. Then, silence. Until one night, the phone rang. An unfamiliar voice. A hospital. An accident. Lily hadn't made it. The woman collapsed on the kitchen floor that night, clutching the receiver like it was her daughter's hand. The grief was too heavy, too fast, and too cruel. There was more. The caller had said something else, something she'd refused to process at the time. There's a child, they'd said. She survived. A granddaughter. But the woman couldn't handle it. Not then. Not after losing Lily. The idea of reaching out, of opening her heart again, was unbearable. And just like Lily had once vanished, so did her child. She told herself it was for the best. That whoever had taken her in would love her. Keep her safe. That searching would only cause more pain. She buried herself in work. In routine. In forgetting. Until today. Until that little girl walked in, asleep in a stranger's arms, with Lily's eyes. Behind the counter, she blinked, the steam gone now, replaced with hot tears brimming in her eyes. She gripped the counter to steady herself. Years of silence, years of pain, and now, this sudden presence that cracked open every wall she'd built. She didn't know what to do. But she knew one thing, she couldn't walk away this time. The man sat back down at the table, brushing a crumb from his daughter's cheek. She smiled up at him, sleepy-eyed, and reached for his hand. He gave it to her instantly, like he'd been waiting for her to need him. He didn't notice the woman behind the counter watching, not anymore. His thoughts were drifting, backward, into the places he rarely let himself go. Her name had been Lily. She was a storm. Beautiful, unpredictable, full of life. They met at a bookstore, of all places. She was laughing at a poetry collection, and he asked what was so funny. She said, life pretending to be profound. They clicked instantly. For a time, they were inseparable. Spontaneous road trips, midnight pancake runs, sitting on the roof counting planes. He'd never met anyone like her. And when she told him she was pregnant, he was terrified, but he stayed. He loved her. And he loved the idea of building something permanent. Amelia was born in the fall, during the first cold snap of the season. Lily cried when she held her. He did too. They weren't married. They didn't have it all figured out. But in that moment, everything felt okay. Then things changed. Lily began to pull away. She said she felt trapped. Said she missed being young, wild, free. She wasn't made for routine. She wanted to travel, to chase her old self. And he just wanted stability for their daughter. One night, she left. Just like that. He waited, hoped, called. Then one day, he got the call. An accident. A highway. A goodbye he never got to say. He was listed on the papers. He took full custody. No questions. No hesitation. He packed their things, left the city, and never looked back. No extended family, no custody fights, just the two of them, against the world. He'd been running ever since. Not from anything, but towards something better. A place where she could grow without pain. A life where she'd never feel abandoned. He looked at Amelia now, her tiny hands, her sleepy grin. She was everything Lily couldn't be. And everything he never knew he needed. And yet, even in all his effort to protect her, he sometimes wondered, had he done enough? The cafe was quieter now. A few customers had left, and the buzz of conversation had softened to a low murmur. Outside, the rain had slowed to a drizzle. Inside, though, the storm was just beginning. The woman stepped out from behind the counter. Her movements were slow, hesitant, like she wasn't entirely sure what she was doing. She picked up a cloth and began wiping a nearby table, one far too clean to need cleaning, but it was closer to him. Closer to her. She didn't speak. Neither did he. But their presence was a conversation all its own. Amelia was now fully awake, sipping the last of her juice and swinging her legs. She looked up at the woman and smiled. "Hi." The woman's breath caught. "Hi, sweetheart." The father looked up. "She likes talking to people," he said, offering a half-smile. "Always has." She's very friendly," the woman replied, her voice almost breaking. There was a pause, too long, too loaded. The air between them thickened. "Have you been in town long?" she asked, trying to sound casual. He shook his head. "Just passing through. I'm actually looking for a place to settle. Somewhere quiet." She nodded slowly. "This town is quiet. I noticed." Another pause. Longer this time. Finally, she sat at the edge of the table. Her hands trembled slightly, fingers intertwined, thumbs nervously rubbing. "There's something I need to ask," she said. He straightened. "Okay. How old is she?" 5. Almost 6. Her eyes closed for a moment. "Born in the fall?" He stared at her, the hairs on his arms rising. "Yeah. October." She swallowed hard. Her mom's name, it was Lily, wasn't it? The cafe went silent. Even the air seemed to freeze. He nodded slowly. "Yeah. Lily." She didn't speak. She didn't move. Tears filled her eyes but didn't fall. Amelia tilted her head, sensing the change. "Do you know her?" the father asked, voice low. The woman met his eyes, and for the first time, didn't look away. "Yes," she said, her voice breaking. "She was my daughter." The father sat back slowly. His lips parted, but nothing came out. Amelia looked between them. "You knew Mommy?" The woman nodded. "Yes, baby. I did." Silence fell again, this time not heavy with awkwardness, but with something far more fragile. Recognition. History. Pain. The father looked at her, truly looked at her, as if seeing her for the first time. "You're Lily's mom." The woman nodded, eyes locked on Amelia. "I never thought I'd see her again, not like this." "I didn't know," he said quietly. "She never talked about her family." "Not really. I asked a few times, but she always changed the subject." "She left when she was 18, the woman replied, her voice breaking. "She said she needed space. I didn't want to push. I thought if I gave her time, she'd come back." She talked about feeling alone. "Like she didn't belong anywhere," he said. "But she loved Amelia. She really did." The woman nodded slowly. "I believe that. I believe she did." They sat in silence for a moment as Amelia hummed softly, tracing her finger along the table's edge. "I didn't know there was anyone left," the father said. "After she passed, the hospital, they never mentioned family. I was listed, but I couldn't face it," the woman confessed. "I was so broken. I didn't know how to raise a child again." I didn't even know who had her. I didn't think she had anyone. I was just trying to do right by her. You did, the woman said, firmly now. You have. I can see it. The father swallowed hard, the tension in his shoulders easing just a little. Then Amelia, still oblivious to the full weight of the moment, smiled brightly. You're mommy's mommy. The woman smiled through her tears. Yes, baby. I'm your grandma. Amelia blinked. I've never had a grandma before. Well, the woman whispered, you do now. If you want one. Amelia grinned. Okay. The father looked between them, emotions crashing inside him. Relief. Guilt. Hope. She should know where she comes from, he said. If you want to be part of her life, we can figure that out. I'd like that, the woman said. More than anything. She reached across the table, gently resting her hand on the man's. He didn't pull away. Thank you, she whispered. For keeping her safe. For loving her the way you do. He nodded. Always. And for the first time in years, something began to heal, quietly, gently, like sunlight creeping through a window after a long, cold night. They stayed at the table long after their drinks had gone cold. Words came easier now, stories spilling out like overdue confessions. The woman told Amelia about Lily as a little girl, how she used to dance barefoot in the living room, how she insisted peanut butter belonged on everything, how she once painted the family dog purple because he looked bored. Amelia giggled at every story, eyes wide with wonder, her curiosity blooming like a sunflower turning toward light. The father listened quietly, absorbing these missing pieces of Lily. For years, he'd only had fragments, now he had context. Now he had color. Emotion. In return, he shared what Lily had become, a restless spirit, a dreamer, a fierce mother despite the chaos inside her. He talked about the nights she'd sing to Amelia when no one else was watching. How she could silence a storm with her voice. Together, they rebuilt her. Not perfect. Not without pain. But whole. I wish she could see this, the woman said softly. She can, the father replied. In her own way, I think she led us here. They sat quietly, letting that thought settle. Amelia, with a juice-stained smile and sticky fingers, looked at them both. Can we come back here tomorrow? The woman laughed gently. You can come back anytime you want. The father glanced around the cafe, then at the woman. Do you still run this place? She nodded. Every day. My whole life's in here. He smiled. It feels safe. Familiar. I don't know if it's too soon to say this, but maybe this is the place. What place? She asked. The one we've been looking for. The woman's heart skipped. You'd stay? If you're open to it, he said, I'd like to try. For her. For Amelia. She nodded, eyes glistening. Then let's try. She stood and walked around the table, kneeling beside Amelia, pulling her into a gentle hug. Amelia wrapped her arms around her neck without hesitation. It wasn't dramatic. It wasn't loud. But in that quiet embrace, something long lost found its way home. As the rain stopped outside and sunlight broke through the clouds, the cafe felt lighter. A family, finally whole. A week passed. The man and his daughter came to the cafe every morning, like clockwork. Sometimes they stayed for hours, sometimes just long enough for a muffin and juice. But they always sat at the same table, the one by the window, where the light poured in just right. The woman would greet them with a quiet smile, but every day that smile grew a little wider. Amelia called her grandma now without hesitation, like the word had always belonged to her. They were building something new, routine, rhythm, roots. One morning, as Amelia was coloring at the table, the father approached the counter. She's sleeping better, he said. She hasn't had a nightmare all week. The woman's eyes lit up. I'm glad. She talks about you every night before bed. She says she feels like she has more family now. Like she's not alone. The woman's voice caught. She's not. He nodded. Neither am I. There was a pause. Then he added, I was afraid to stop moving. Like if I settled, the grief would catch up with me. And now, she asked. Now. I think maybe grief is something you don't outrun. You just learn to carry it, with help. That afternoon, Amelia held both their hands as they walked out of the cafe together. To anyone watching, they looked like any family. But for them, it was everything. They didn't erase the past. They didn't pretend it didn't hurt. But they made space for healing. For connection. For second chances. And in a world that often feels too fast, too loud, too unforgiving, sometimes, all it takes is a quiet cafe, a sleeping child, and the courage to say, I remember. So if this story touched you, even a little, don't keep it to yourself. Click that like button, share it with someone who needs a moment of hope, and leave a comment below. Family finds a way. And if you want more stories like this, stories that dig deep and reach further, hit that subscribe button. Because there's always another story waiting to be told. Because stories like this aren't just fiction. They're reflections, of love, of loss, of the chance to start again. And maybe, just maybe, they help us believe that healing is possible. Thank you for watching. You're part of this story now, too. Don't forget that.